Again, thank you so much for coming this afternoon for us to do this final vote on the updated shared services plan. It is my unique privilege to present the County Executive for Westchester, our good friend and our convener for this afternoon, County Executive George Latimer.
Thanks very much. Well, I really wanted to drag you out of your air-conditioned offices, wherever you are, into a hot day and schlep over, up, down into White Plains. But we appreciate every one of you being here today, whether you came from Ardsley or Bedford or Harrison or any other part of our globe. What we're doing today is part of a process that's been laid out by the state government, by the governor and the legislature. So there's a certain formality here, and that's why I have to pull poor Rob Greenstein out of his seat. I saw Teresa Knickerbocker the other night. Now she's got to come down here, Home and Home series.
Nice to see you again.
But there is a formality which we're asked to do, and ultimately at the end of the process, we hope there'll be state aid to match savings that we hope to identify. Let me start with a few thank yous. We owe a debt of gratitude to Dr. Jim Malatras, who is sitting right next to me. He will be conducting the bulk of the meeting, and he is a person who has really put thought into this process, and thought with academic background, but also practicality and background. And we owe a great debt of gratitude to him and to Jerry Benjamin for consulting with us and helping us try to shape a plan that we hope will be practical to the best of our ability and provide, hopefully, some savings at the end of the day. And I recognize that it's his professionalism that we're sort of leaning on in many ways. So as he advises us and guides us, hopefully we'll be able to be helpful. And along with his help of Jerry Benjamin, we thank them both. Let me thank from my team, our team, Emily Saltzman and Susan Spear. Stand up, please. Give a little wave so we can thank you in person. I'm sure each of you have the same situation in your worlds, but there are people who do the heavy lifting on different projects. You know, Kevin Haskins gets up and takes all the credit in Pound Ridge, but the reality is somebody else back there is doing the heavy lifting. Carl Fergenzi gets all the credit in Mount Pleasant, though. Everybody knows Carl does all the work. But the upshot of it is Emily and Susan have done yeoman's work on this. And there is, as I said a second ago, there's a certain academic rigor to this. So it's not just put together a sheet of notes and that's sufficient. And so both Emily and Susan, we owe a great debt of gratitude for all the work they've done. We have a very terrific group of county commissioners, department heads that are with us today. Not all of them could be with us today. There's a variety of things happening out there. Many of these people you have worked with in the past. When our administration came on board, we did not decide that it was an automatic that we would replace everybody, because we thought there was a lot of talent in this county government before we came on board, and we wanted to keep as much of the best of it as we thought we could. And with that thought in mind, that's kind of an unusual thought when administrations change. But we have a terrific group of county commissioners. We have our challenges. We have our difficulties. We'll have our disagreements from time to time. But I'm very appreciative of their professional work getting us to this point and all the work that's going to come after this. So a round of applause and thank you to all of our county commissioners. And then to each of you that represent all the different local governments, I have tried to make an effort to come to each of your different council, town, and village board meetings. This week, in visiting Buchanan and Yorktown, I hit my 34th and 35th meetings. I've got 10 more to go. So there's a lot of municipalities, but most of you know that I began my career in this endeavor as a member of a council, a city council in Rye. And I have tremendous respect for local government, tremendous respect. I think that that's the unsung portion of government. A lot of credit is given at the higher levels. There's a lot of celebrity stature that goes with being a governor and a president and whatever else down the line. But running your villages, your towns, and your cities, small and large cities, really is where much of this happens. So I think those of us who are not representing a town, city, or village ought to applaud all of the people that are here representing town, city, or village. Thank you for your hard work. We're also, and this will be the last of my comments, we're also very much understanding that this is not the beginning of cooperation between municipalities or the county government. There are so many different existing efforts that go on And we've tried to include as many of those as we knew of in this report, to recognize for one fact that the villages of Portchester and Rybrook collaborate on funding and running a library, that the village of Larchmont and the town of Mamaroneck coordinate in a joint sanitation district. It isn't the same everywhere. And historically, the Tuckahoes and the Bronxvilles decide what they cooperate on and what makes better sense for them to do separately. I know that Steve and Mary get along very well, but they make decisions in their best corporate interests, and I do respect that. I respect the fact that to this point you've cooperated where you saw the opportunities, but you also have to worry about, by necessity, the corporate interests of the jurisdiction that you run and the people that elected you, whether that is or isn't in sync with the things we're trying to do with the county. But what we're trying to do with this plan is not tell you what to do. We're trying to have a dialogue and a cooperative feeling, where you have some sense of confidence that the county government is your partner in these things. Linda and Teresa and Andre and I have responsibility in this Indian Point closing. We've got to find that partnership somehow. And there's a partnership on the river towns that exist that ought to have the county as part of it. That's what we're striving for in trying to satisfy what the state has given us and then where we go from there. And it may be that over time, it's the county government that picks up a cost so that the municipal government can show the savings. That's okay with me, as long as the net result of this is a savings. If we can tell the people that we jointly represent that in a specific function they're paying less, but the savings comes in the city budget rather than in the county budget, then that's okay with me. Because at the end of the day, you and I both know that's all the average Joe cares about. They don't sit there and say, what does the town of Bedford and the Bed Central School District and they don't think that way. They say, I pay this much property taxes. And that's what they want to see affect. So hopefully, as we start the plan, as we implement the plan, as we change the plan as we go along, we'll be able to do that. So with those thoughts, I appreciate you taking your afternoon to be here. I'll now ask Dr. Jim Alatros to take it from here and lead us through the process for this afternoon.
Good afternoon. Can everybody hear me without the mic? I will be singing tonight. A lounge act. First of all, thank you all for participating in the process. I know when consultants call and say, hey, we'd like to help you be more efficient, you look at us with a little look of disdain, which I understand. But I appreciate your indulgence because it was a really important process, and I think what's represented in this plan is from you. We didn't make this up. We got all of these ideas from you, and to the team of Jerry and Patty and Al and Tom and others, as well as the county participants, it's been a really great process, and I think this is a beginning of a good thing. I want to very quickly go through the overview of what's in the plan and what's sort of been set aside for future consideration, because we added some things to the report that you can continue to work on, answer whatever your questions, and then I want to explain the voting process. It's not as complicated as it sounds, but it gets a little complicated. So quickly I will go over basic parts of the plan. There's a provision in the law, like I mentioned when I first came, we came a couple of months ago, that plans may be resubmitted if it's in the taxpayer's interest. We found significant more savings from you all that it is indeed in the taxpayer's interest, so that will be reflected to the state, indeed, that we've hit that goal. This was the original thing where Westchester was among the had the least savings in the original plan, so this was a far greater and far better process when it came to this year's program. We focused on 4 main areas, and when we talked to you, those were the 4 main areas, which was shared services, potential consolidations, better coordination, and elimination of duplication. There was a lot of discussion about human capital. I think everybody in their mind wanted to protect human capital and get at those areas where we can protect the workforce, protect the labor force, but also find savings in the long term. So in many cases, what we liked about this plan, the county executive mentioned it, and I think his leadership should be applauded in this process without an active county executive in a plan like this, it doesn't work out as well. So I think we should all thank the county executive for his role in facilitating this process. But the best part of it wasn't that what you all came up with wasn't simply the county dictating or taking over things. It was shared cooperation among towns, villages, and cities, sometimes when the county wasn't even involved. We joked, but it was an important piece. Appendix B, which got a lot of focus, which was previous and past shared services success, which we'll still take examples for the final report, so that's not over. So if you have more examples, please send them our way. Was important to highlight because it shows that you're doing a lot in Westchester and you're building upon that success. So we want to adequately reflect that in this final plan and building off of those things. So that is a nice, useful piece to have. Based on the current estimates in this plan, we found $27 million in recurring taxpayer savings, which is far greater than the $2 million from the previous plan. We included the previous plan's savings here. This is a very conservative estimate. We don't like to oversell. We often come in under where you end up. Albany County, where we're also working, they're actually 5% higher in their savings than we projected last year. And in some of the areas that we'll talk about, they're doubling their savings than what we projected. So we come in conservative in order to make it more of a reasonable plan, but we think you can far exceed $27 million when all said and done. We focused on 3 areas to include. It wasn't that we got a lot of ideas, which was great. We came in, there was something like 175 or 180 ideas that came in. Jerry, that ruined Jerry's summer, but the Yankees weren't doing well in the last month anyway, so it was okay. We focused on 3 things. We wanted to include in a plan things that had considerable support. It just wasn't 1 or 2 municipalities. A lot of municipalities had an interest in it. We're more fully developed. It wasn't just a kernel of an idea, but we had some financials to back it up, or we had some documentation that we could be comfortable with, and finally had a potential of success that there would be follow through in the end so you can recover your savings through the state. The first proposal, which was probably one of the most popular proposals, was to create the Westchester Saves online shared services portal and app, which is just a fancy way of doing shared equipment, shared personnel, shared contracts. Suffolk County is the model for this, and they really have done a great job in Suffolk County, which I think there'll be a lot of shared knowledge when they're in the middle of developing theirs. Overall, you see the lead up. When fully phased in, we think this can save about $9.2 million annually in recurring savings. We do think that's a little low. We think once you get involved and start doing these things, the savings will be much more considerable. And you'll see it leads up $2.3 million in the first year, $4.6 million in the second year. Second proposal was to digitize records. That was another area that came up a lot from municipalities. There are a couple of counties doing this right now, Tompkins County being one of them, where a small county is actually having a lot of success and a lot of savings, and is better management for their citizens, quite frankly, because you can more easily access their public documents, deeds, health certificates, other things, as well as cut down on just space, which is a considerable cost, filing, keeping track of records like that. So this digitized process, recurring we found to be about $750,000. We know this is well under what ultimately, if more of the county participates, that we'll find in savings. This is just based on those municipalities that showed some interest as of today. But as more of you sign up, we think the savings will be greater. We think more could be done, and there are multiple components in this proposal that we're happy to talk through, which is a countywide centralized contract for information technology services. In some cases, some of you are paying more money for the same contract, IT contract. Well, we should just end that process immediately. I want to put you in the best car at the cheapest price. I'm here to help you with that. But I think a countywide coordinated process, this isn't necessarily the county taking over IT services, but facilitating contracts and other things to make sure you're getting best cost. We think when fully phased in, that's $3.5 million in annualized savings. Law enforcement was one area. Courts, justice came up quite a bit in all of our conversations with you, as well as in the survey. There were many different components of this. more cooperation and sharing of law enforcement personnel or EMS services, not just eliminating people and then sharing the service, but literally in some parts of the county, there are deserts of coverage for EMS services while there is surplus in others. So however we can better coordinate that, we think there's a savings to some municipalities. Court consolidation came up quite a bit in our conversations with you. Those are in this plan. These types of things, though, are just the start of the process. Again, this law doesn't allow us to just go around existing municipal law. So if you want to do a town consolidate, court consolidation, and other things, this will now begin that process. If you're interested, you have to go through the general municipal law and the judiciary law to get those things done. But if you do those things that everybody put in the plan, we think it could yield at least $4 million of savings. These take longer periods of time, so we didn't put any savings right up front because we don't think you can necessarily get a court consolidation done in 6 months or a year. Another interesting, although Westchester already has a great health plan, many of the smaller municipalities raised the creation of a health consortium for Westchester County, which we think is a good idea, which we think can yield considerable savings for those municipalities, especially given our work with the state over the past year where we changed some of the rules with the insurance department to make it easier to actually create consortia to help save dollars for municipalities. This process is taking off in many counties across the state based off of this process. Albany County is doing one. Schenectady County is doing one. Many counties are now entering these. Tompkins County, again, has one of the better processes in place. So all in, this takes more time, again, to do. But with the municipalities that were interested, it's about $3 million in annualized savings. If more join up, it could be even greater. This came up, and this is also something, because we put this in the out years, the management of tax assessment and billing. That was a common refrain, either using similar financial systems or software or databases, or just the assessment process and how to manage that. The county will take a coordinated role. If you look at the plan, we think fully phased in, it could be $1.8 million of what exists, of what was interested now. But again, this could be even greater as more municipalities sign up. This is also the beginning. The financial system's not so much, but I heard that there's been some discussion about assessment in Westchester in the past. I've heard, read some stories. No, but in all seriousness, that takes more conversations, but we think that begins the process of helping save some tax dollars. Energy efficiency is something that you all have been a statewide and actually national leader on in Westchester, coming from community groups and then municipalities yourselves. You are sort of the gold standard on energy efficiency. So I was a little surprised actually when more of these types of proposals came up in this plan too. Many municipalities who weren't fully engaged in the community choice aggregation program, for instance, expressed that they would join the community aggregation program, which would be great. That's the leveraging of the energy program, which we thought was a really great positive step. There were some municipalities here that haven't converted their streetlights to LED, for instance. The county, working with the state partners like NYPA and others, will work to help convert that. That is just found savings when you figure those things out. So there is much more in this plan now to do on energy efficiency. It's great not only for our carbon footprint, but it's great for the taxpayer and as well as your bottom line in managing your budgets. We think in year one, if we get some of the low-hanging fruit done, which we think there's some projects, that's $1 million in savings, which could go up. $1 million in savings is also a match, remember, from the state, which is a good thing. Fully phased in, $3.5 million. This was another proposal, shared school resource officers. This is happening already in some cases. If you're interested in being part of that process in the county, please talk to Emily, because she is all-knowing on this. I am just a pretty face on this proposal. But again, these types of issues, it seems small, but in the end, $1 million in savings is real savings when we're talking about trying to get matches, and that could be matched by the state. Overall, this is what it looks like. In the first year, it's $7.5 million of savings. Those are all matchable opportunities. The state will match savings in your first year. So we're going to try to do more now in the implementation phase of getting that number up, but 7.5 is significant under a plan. By year two, 2020, $9.3 million in savings is what we're projecting. And fully phased in, because some of the bigger proposals come into play, a health consortia and other things, it's about $27 million, which we do think, and this is when the portal could be fully up and developed and running too. So we think there's a lot more opportunities by 2020. It may not lead to matches with the state, but we all know the pressures of the SALT issue going on with the federal tax code and other things. So those fiscal pressures are going to continue. So having those offsets are really important. Really quickly before I get into the vote, here are some of the proposals that were under consideration. We wanted to put these in the report. We couldn't adequately project savings at this time or interest, but we wanted to say it because it came up in our public hearings as well as in meetings with you. So we wanted to at least tip the cap and say this is something we should still continue to work on. One is the management of the municipal workforce, this human capital problem. This wasn't a way of just meat cleavering the workforce. It was actually to talk about how do you strengthen the workforce, maximize the workforces that we have to fill in areas. People raised all sorts of suggestions about how to do that, schools sharing with towns on snow removal to other types of things. We think those discussions should continue. There's a lot of issues that came up with civil service administration, just the administration of the program itself, and how do you better and more efficiently do the administration of civil service. How do you deal with collective bargaining agreements? That is the management of that process, not necessarily the substance of it itself, and other things. Second, this came up literally in every conversation that we had. This came up in our public hearings. We know this is on a lot of people's mind, which is better management of municipal wastewater operations as well as drinking water operations. We know there's some very specific issues in the county and some of the municipalities. There were some calls in our meetings with you, which we thought were interesting, regionalizing some of this process, either for drinking water or wastewater. Those take a lot more conversations, though. We didn't even know where to start to prioritize or say what a projected savings could be. But there was a lot of interest in more joint efforts, either to provide drinking water or dealing with the environmental remediation issues or compliance issues with the state. So we think there's a lot more to be had there. There's a lot of interest. We wanted to put it in the report as well as who was interested in some level so you can all continue to have those conversations. There was some discussion of countywide taxi license. I think, again, there was some interest there. I think working with the county and others, you have to continue that dialogue, but there was some interest there, not just to better and more efficiently run the system. There was a lot of questions about people, disability issues, and individuals in this county with disability issues. I think it may not be a shared services in the traditional sense of tax savings, but there's a human rights issue potentially here that as well that should be worked on from a government efficiency and management perspective that we wanted to also highlight. Shared maintenance facilities. I'll tell a funny story about shared maintenance facilities. There was a lot of opportunity from you all to maybe share some of your facilities, or if you're going to update or build a new facility, you share with other municipalities. This was a big issue in Albany County. This is one of our major proposals in Albany County. One municipality recently had to withdraw from their proposal because their trucks don't fit in the new building. So if you go forward with the plan, measure your trucks first, or measure the height of the facility. I don't know why they built the facility so small. Usually they build really big truck facilities. But this is another area, like court consolidation. It wasn't necessarily about the consolidation of the court system. It was, why build multiple buildings? Why can't we share buildings and security personnel and others when doing these things? That needs further discussion. And that's pretty much where we left it. So that is the proposal. Should we talk about the vote and then, or?
Thank you. A couple of things that I wanted to raise, and then Jim will explain how we're going to do the vote. But I think prior to that, we'll take questions that people will have on the proposals. First of all, I also want to acknowledge Patty Dwyer, former village administrator of Pleasantville, experienced municipal administrator who was part of this team and very helpful with her insights, having done the job that many of you in this room. So thank you, Patty, for joining us. I wanted to point out, among the handouts is a release that just went out a couple of days ago from the governor's office about this money. And it really is shared services is good government, but at the end of the day, Jim has pointed out our savings estimates are on the conservative side. There is money aside for reimbursing the counties if you go ahead and implement your plan and document your savings. So it's a great opportunity for this county, and as Jim has mentioned, there are some counties that have very large estimates from the plans that they submitted last year that may not be realized. So there really could be a lot of this money, this $225 million, still available. Keep in mind also, not every county submitted a plan. So we really have an opportunity here for our county, and is something that makes all of this hard work extremely worthwhile.
Thank you. Before I turn to the voting process, is there any questions on the proposals themselves? Or? Great. Yes. So.
Hi, Linda Puglisi from the town of Cortland. Yeah, my question on the numbers, the figures, is that based on all land, if every municipality participates, or?
No, these are based on those municipalities that expressed interest in those particular proposals. So they are very conservative.
Throughout the process?
Yes.
Throughout the process.
We didn't want to assume that anybody who did not say we were interested in doing the portal, for instance, their savings.
I see.
Only those who have said yes.
Okay. And then who is going to oversee this process? Is the county the umbrella? They're going to...
The county.
county is
there's
going
been
to-
a lot, many counties, and I think it's important we put it in the report too, because this came just from our research on reviewing these the process for the last 2 years, is having a full-time committed person on this
Okay.
is something that's really important, or a team of people, because you all are busy managing your governments. The county is very busy managing the government. So in Suffolk and other places who have committed teams to this, you see more savings coming out of those counties because they can dedicate the time to it.
And my last question, I know the answer to it. We've been sharing services for many, many years in our community. We don't get any back credit, right?
No back, just.
I can.
We asked.
I
They
know
said
you
no.
did, county executive. I can try, right?
Yeah, we asked too. But
Thank you.
They said no.
You're sharing broad concepts at this point in time, so the key is in the implementation.
Yes.
Now, the cost associated with these things, so for example, there's a contract for IT.
Yes.
That's very appealing to me if your price is lower than the current price that I have.
Right.
So if I choose to opt into these things, I want to verify that it's based upon price and service delivered that's better, equal to or better than what I currently have.
Right. Yes. I mean, we'll talk about the vote too. It's what people are comfortable opting into. I think, because some people already have services that they really like. But yes, you want to be comfortable. You want to make sure now in the implementation phase that it makes sense. I think we'll work with the county. Will work however they set up the process with you all too. Planning grants and other things. Creating a healthcare consortium, for instance, is a difficult, time-consuming thing to do. You want people to come in and actually provide the real analysis, go through all of the documents to make sure you are getting a better price and the same service. So yeah, that implementation phase is very.
Because we're actually currently part of this.
Yes.
So I'll shop that.
Yeah.
So if I vote now, it's non-binding.
This so let's talk about the vote, because you all have a sheet here. We like to do it a little differently because Jerry is a very contrarian person. So they established a law, and he said, you know what, I don't like it. We're going to do it our own way. We need you to fill out this sheet. Put your municipality name on it so we have a record of it. You have to vote up or down on the entire plan, but that does not commit you to doing the entire plan. What we would like for is all of the 8 proposals. You're voting on the 8 proposals that we have savings estimate for. If you're interested in that proposal, that you're committing to explore the possibility of doing it, it doesn't lock you in. It doesn't bind you contractually. If we create the Westchester Saves app in 6 months from now, you said, you know what, this isn't for me. There's no authority to arrest you for not doing it. I think the county executive has that authority. I don't think.
Gina, just like you, I have a legislative entity as well. So what we present here still has to have the imprimatur of the Board of Legislators. I see some of our colleagues in the Board of Legislators are there, and you have to go back to your village board, and everybody has to do that. What we're doing today, excuse me, follows what the state has laid out. This is not our decision to do it this way. This is the state. It doesn't bind you because ultimately when we sign into these things, we're going to have separate legal arrangements that your town, village lawyers will look at and feel comfortable with, and our county attorneys, and that's how we'll sign on in the final analysis to these things. If we had a general vote and people said, yes, this is a good plan, but then nobody opted into any of the specifics, the state would rightfully say, how much interest really is there in doing these things? That's really what we're talking about. But as I said at the outset, I recognize that you and everybody else has separate corporate interests. And your corporate interests, Rob and Chris's, sitting side by side, may be different. And you'll make that determination with your board, as will Rob, as will Chris, as will everybody else in this room.
So, I mean, yes, right now, but what I'm hearing is.
Does not commit you to actually doing the final product that's before us.
What's a testament? You'll make a good faith effort to pursue the process.
Just one question on that, if I could follow up. Chris Burdick, Town of Bedford. And thank you, Gina, for asking that question and for the answers. Then just take that one step further. Then hypothetically, if we were to check yes on every one of these, really what we're saying is we have a sincere interest in this and would like to pursue conversations. That's the extent of our obligation,
Yes.
moral or otherwise,
Then
right?
you'll make a good faith effort to pursue those things.
Thank you.
There's no penalty for opting out. We hope that you don't have a facility where your truck doesn't fit in ultimately, is the issue.
Thank you.
Just conversely, if today you think you don't want to be part of it, and things change in your municipality, can you opt back into it?
You can always opt in. What gets a little, yes, you can always opt in. We've had in other municipalities, people opt in after they see a different utility in what's going on. We just like to have a general sense because it helps get the savings match part with the state more established right away with them, so they know certain municipalities are participating. We can monitor that. But yes, you can opt in later.
Question about the whole regional management and tax assessment bill. Does the county then maintain the goals, and does the county do a revow?
No, this is one of those, gets to the county executive's point. There were several options in the report, several models that I think you now have to work through. Some of it was just the county coordinating the process itself, but not taking it over. Some was a regionalized process where multiple municipalities sort of teamed up. Some was just billing systems and financial systems. So that would now have to be worked out depending on the interest of where you all end up today. But there's not necessarily, there's no county takeover and a revow in this proposal.
Let me just say that we're really saying to the state there was a good faith effort. People were consulted. Out of that consultation, we derived a certain number of, not consensual, but supported ideas, reasonably well-supported ideas. We've asked you to think about it, and you're saying we're willing to think about it more and consider taking a next step. So it's not, where it sounds a little not so kosher that you're not committing to anything, what you're really hearing is that we reached out, we talked to you, we got ideas, we gathered these ideas, we winnowed down to a few that a lot of people want to take further, and you're willing to take that next look.
Because for an example for me would be, sure, we'll hear about the healthcare consortium, but not only does it have to be cheaper, but in our contracts, I'm sure others, it's got to be Empire Plan or better with our union contracts. So if the plan that's provided is not or better, Empire Plan or better, then we can't even consider it.
The first year, right, that's why we didn't even build in any savings. You may actually get some very preliminary savings depending on where you are in the first year. We don't even consider that. You have to provide all your financial and health data. You have to run the numbers to make sure it makes sense. Most municipalities aren't breaking or renegotiating contracts with all their collective bargaining units, so you have to carry a level of service under the consortium with a phase and with the potential where you can eventually match up. So it's very complicated. So you're basically saying, great, let's start this process. We commit to start this process and see where it goes. And some people have entered in some of the counties and exited, like you have said, based on where people in that process are. Some people say, you know, the small health consortium that we're involved in right now, it's better for us. And some have actually gravitated towards other proposals within their county, but it got the conversation going. Yeah, the remarkable thing in a couple of the counties, this conversation has exactly been, people are now talking about these things, and some of the areas have beefed up. We've had a lot more participation than we thought. The Health Consortium is one of those. Originally, there was only a handful of the towns and villages that were interested. We have half of the county now involved, and they're really participating. The portal, I think, is another area where it's like found money in a way. You're already sharing. This gets to you're already doing a lot, but if you put it through a system where you can keep a record of it, Albany County, they doubled their savings. They're going to make a heck of a lot more back from the state in the match this year. So those things, I think, will flourish more as soon as you get some of these conversations. And in some areas, we don't know where it's going to go, right? We can estimate this, but when you start talking about assessment coordination or a water district coordination, we don't know right now. It depends on where you end up and where you want to go, but we want to highlight the fact that there was some interest in those issues. So, if you could, and then you'll call the roll. So this is how you have to vote up or down on the entire plan. So you'll have your municipality call. We hope you vote yes, because yes is nice. No makes us feel bad, and we lose a percentage every time you vote no. And the county executive gets to cane us for every no vote.
Is there some rebate?
So that makes us feel bad. Caning is unpleasant. But what you have to do is fill out what you're interested in for the proposals. Whoever is interested in what, there will be an appendix attached to the end of the final report, which you all will get, which will say, Proposal 1 has the following interest from these 10 municipalities. Proposal 2 has it from these following 15 municipalities. We have to by law describe why you aren't interested in certain proposals. So if you don't opt in, we're going to put a general provision saying it wasn't for you, but you may enter later. So that's how it's going to look. And then for the rest of the plan, you just vote up or down. So if you choose 3 of them, you're really just choosing those 3. You're voting for those 3, not all of them. But you're not, so you don't have to vote against it's an up or down on the whole plan, but you get to choose like a la carte menu what you want to participate. Is that clear? So we need this filled out so we can collect it and attach it to the report, just your municipality and yes or no. Some have raised, because the gentleman asked a question, there's a lot of provisions within some of the proposals. If you're interested in a specific proposal in one of them, like take law enforcement, some folks were interested in town court consolidation, some folks were interested in 911 services, some folks were interested in EMS services. If you're only interested in 1 or 2 of those things, you can mention it in the note box. I'm interested in proposal 2 and only for this provision, which is fine too, so we know where to focus on that. So if you could just fill that out, we can collect it, that would be great. And then we'll go and do the vote now if you're ready. So we'll call your municipality name, you just say aye or no, aye, and then we can close the meeting after the vote.
Okay, I'm going to call the roll by municipalities. So a couple of people just arrived. So Susan will get you and get us the name. Josh Cohn, Mayor of the City of Rye. Aye. Mayor Tom Roach, City of White Plains.
Aye.
Mayor Mike Spano, City of Yonkers. Aye. Supervisor Chris Burdick, Town of Bedford. Aye. Supervisor Linda Puglisi, Town of Portland.
Aye.
Supervisor Mayor, Town Village of Harrison, Ron Belmont.
Aye.
Supervisor Peter Parsons, Town of Lewisboro.
Aye.
Mayor Nancy Kabulian, Village of Ardsley. Aye. Mayor Lori Sullivan, Village of Briarcliff Manor. Oh, not here. Sorry. Mayor Mary Marvin, Mayor Village of Bronxville. Aye. Mayor Teresa Knickerbocker, Village of Buchanan.
Aye.
Mayor Brian Pugh, Village of Croton-on-Hudson.
Aye.
Mayor Bob McLaughlin, Village of Dobbs Ferry.
Aye.
Mayor Robert Williams, Village of Elmsford.
Aye.
Mayor Lorraine Walsh, Village of Larchmont.
Aye.
Supervisor Nancy Seligson, Town of Mamaroneck.
Aye.
Mayor, Town, Village of Mount Kisco, Gina Pasinich.
Aye.
Supervisor Carl Fulgenzi, Town of Mount Pleasant.
Aye.
Supervisor Robert Greenstein, Town of Newcastle.
Aye.
Supervisor, Town of North Castle, Michael Shaliro.
Aye.
Supervisor Dana Levenberg, Town of Ossining.
Aye.
Supervisor Kevin Hansen, Town of Pound Ridge.
Aye.
Supervisor Gary Zuckerman, Town of Rye. Mayor, Town, Village of Scarsdale, Dan Hochbert. Mayor Thomas Murphy, Village of Mamaroneck. Mayor Jennifer Monachino Lappi, Village of Pelham Manor. Mayor Peter Scherer, Village of Pleasantville. Mayor Richard Falanca, Village of Portchester. Mayor Drew Fischel, Village of Tarrytown. Mayor Steve Eklund, Village of Tuckahoe. Are there any? Greenberg? Paul Feiner, Town of Greenberg? Thank you. Anyone else that I missed?
Lord
and this-
Salem
the-
authorized me to vote aye for Warren.
Pardon?
I was authorized to vote aye on behalf of Warren Lucas in
Great.
North Salem. in
Thank
North
you.
Salem.
And we have one school district here. Yes. Vote, your vote? Yes, your vote? Okay, great. So I didn't miss anyone else? Okay. The ayes have it. Thank you.